Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Morgan Hughes, and I'm the event and project manager for South Dakota Specialty Producers Association. I appreciate you joining to discuss regional aggregation and learn about current opportunities and resources. First, I want to note that our ability to host this series of regional meetings is supported through a specialty crop block grant that SDSPA received through the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources. Today, we have three presenters here to discuss some different topics. And after the presentations, I have a series of resources, opportunities, and projects in development that I'll go over. And then to end the meeting, there will be a chance to discuss some current challenges, ideas, and interests regarding aggregation. So to start, I'm going to turn it over to Caleb, who is joining us this morning from North Carolina. He is part of ASAP, which runs a produce prescription program.
Right on. Thanks so much, Morgan, and good morning, everyone. My name is Caleb Thomason. I do manage ASAP's Farm Fresh Produce Prescription Program. For those who are listening and maybe not viewing, ASAP stands for Appalachian Sustainable Agriculture Project. And here with me today is Ray Argyropoulos. I believe she's just in the audience, so you won't get to see her, but I just wanted to acknowledge that she is also, we are a two-person team, and together we oversee the day-to-day implementation of ASAP's produce prescription program. So wanted to provide a little bit of background. I'm going to fly through quite a bit of information. So if anybody has any questions or anything, feel free to ask them at the end or send them to Morgan and she can send them my way. So ASAP, essentially to give you the nutshell version, is a nonprofit organization. We're based in Asheville, North Carolina. Our primary goal is to support local farms and farmers and strengthen local food communities. We serve Southern Appalachia as a region. We predominantly work in Western North Carolina in the Appalachian region, but we kind of spread around a 100-mile radius that branches into some other surrounding states. So I wanted to start by providing some context about why we decided to create this produce prescription program before talking about how we implemented it or how we implement it. Our produce prescription program falls under an umbrella of initiatives that exist within a broader organizational philosophy that we refer to as Farm Fresh for Health. So Farm Fresh for Health was essentially born as a way to frame how ASAP is connecting our communities at large with local food and farm experiences as a way to promote healthy eating and lifestyle. So that's the nutshell version of that. So what this looks like and how this was kind of born is ASAP was already doing a lot at farmers markets and in community spaces and schools and so on and so forth to really engage community and try to create more awareness and more buy-in to local food. So we did this in a number of ways that you can see on the slide. And what we did when creating the Farm Fresh for Health initiative or philosophy, I guess you can call it, is just try to be more intentional about the language we were using, about how we were engaging with people, and trying to reinforce those healthy food choices and improve community health. So one of the things we recognized early on when starting to talk about Farm Fresh for Health is we recognized some barriers that existed. So in 2015, ASAP was collecting survey data at farmers markets to essentially determine how individuals were experiencing markets, experiencing farm tours that we put on, and generally interacting with local food and local food communities. So in 895 surveys taken across 15 markets and 7 farm tours over the course of 2 years from 2016 to 2017, we found that while the majority of our shoppers are local to WNC, about 80%, the average age of shoppers is about 55 or was about 55. 69% of our shoppers identified as female, 97% of our shoppers identified as white non-Hispanic, and that is compared to 84% of the region as a whole identifying as white non-Hispanic. The median household income for shoppers in that region was about $60,000 to $79,000 annual, depending on the particular county, compared to an average median of about $44,800 annual per household in the same region. 95% of our shoppers reported having a higher than high school education compared to 63% total in the region. So essentially, what that boils down to is the average market attendee tended to be white, middle-aged, identifying as female with above average income and education level. So one of the first things ASAP did was starting to capitalize on some SNAP initiatives. So a lot of the farmers markets in our region were already accepting SNAP or looking to accepting SNAP. And we wanted to capitalize that and maximize it. So one of the first things we introduced back in 2019 was a double SNAP program. So I'll try and run through this. I won't spend too much time on this, but it is important because it does intertwine in some unique ways with our produce prescription program. So we did this pilot at a single market, and that is Asheville City Market. That's the market that ASAP runs and operates. And essentially, what it began as was just when people use their SNAP or EBT benefits, we would provide them with what we call Farm Fresh tokens, which are tokens that they could use to purchase fruit and vegetable items only. So when somebody spent, say, $30 at the market, they would get $30 in these farm fresh produce or farm fresh bucks to spend on fruits and vegetables as a match. We eventually dialed that down to be a $20 cap just because we didn't have the funding to match every single purchase. So we had to create some guardrails. But the result, especially post-pandemic, once demand increased both on the producer and the consumer side, who were facing hardships due to the food outlet closures, in 2021, when the market started opening in some capacity, even with social distancing and all the things that came with trying to navigate community spaces in a new way, the program still matched in 2020 alone $255,000 in double SNAP alone. With SNAP included, it was over $500,000 that was going directly into our local food economies, going directly to our farmers and our local vendors. So it was pretty significant. And how this kind of plays into the produce prescription, because this informed some of the things that we were doing with produce prescription, some of the early guardrails that we put in place, and just informed us and understanding that there is definitely a need, that people are looking to get into these community spaces and looking to buy local. But there are just some barriers that have existed for folks, whether real or perceived barriers to gaining access. And so we just wanted to figure out a way to continue to address those and continue to pour money into our local food economies. So in 2020, ASAP began piloting our market model for our produce prescription program at the same market, Asheville City Market, that our double SNAP program began its pilot. Unfortunately, it was cut short due to the pandemic, and did not get going again in any significant way until spring of 2022. But when it picked back up in a big way. And spread across several markets, and it's had huge success that we'll touch on in a little bit. So I just wanted to give a quick rundown of the front end, the middle end, and the back end of how our produce prescription program works. So we partner with we have 13, I believe, referral partners currently, most of which are healthcare providers in and around the Buncombe County area. And we do have some healthcare providers in some surrounding counties as well that are able to make referrals to folks who are generally going to be low income, who suffer from or are at risk for developing diet-related conditions, and could benefit from introducing fresh fruits and vegetables into their diet. So these are the eligibility requirements for our participants in our program. Again, they have to suffer from or be at risk for developing a diet-related condition, and they have to meet just one of the following criteria. They have to be eligible for a federal supplemental nutrition program such as SNAP, or free and reduced lunch, or they have to be enrolled in Medicaid or CHIP. So once the provider determines that the participant or would-be participant meets eligibility requirements, they fill out this form or something that looks like this form. and they send it to us. And so Ray is normally the person that receives this, and Ray will reach out to each individual. Will document in our own system, in our own sheets and stuff, who that person is. We'll keep their information confidential, and we'll begin the enrollment process. This is where sometimes folks get a little lost, but it's easy once you do it. Kind of hard to explain, but in practice, it's fairly straightforward. So once we receive that referral, we reach out to the would-be participant and make sure that they're interested in the program and can access a farmer's market. Then we provide them based on their household size with a prescription ID number, which is essentially just one letter, A, B, or C, followed by 3 numbers. That is their ID that they will take with them to the farmer's market to give to our market managers to receive those farm fresh tokens that they can use like cash to purchase fruits and vegetables at the vendors. So the numbers, or the letters in the numbers, are just acknowledging household size. It's just a little simple code. So A numbers are 1 to 2 people, and those households get $20 a week. B, $40 a week with 3 to 4 people. C is 5+ people, and they get $60 a week. We send them all the information that they need. Ray will talk to them on the phone and answer any questions. They have our contact information, and we really just want to support them in any way that we can in getting to the farmer's market and navigating that space, especially if it's their first time entering that space. Once they get to the market, they present the market manager. Each of our markets has a manager at an information table. They present that ID number to that person at the information table. They receive their tokens, and then this is a picture if you're viewing of the tokens, what they look like. They use them just like cash. Each token is $1, and they can be used on any fresh fruit and or vegetable item at the market. Our tokens don't expire, so if folks don't use them, they can take them home and they can bring them back the next week, or they can take them to a different market and use it at another market. At all the markets, these farm fresh tokens are the same. So for this audience, I wanted to just talk a little bit about funding and how reimbursement to vendors works. It's pretty straightforward. Again, we are a nonprofit. So funding for us is done predominantly through a collection of federal and private grants and donors. The bulk of our funding comes from a single grant, which is a federal grant, USDA program called GusNIP, and they provide competitive grants for a variety of initiatives addressing food insecurity. So that's most of our funding, and then we supplement that with a variety of smaller private grants, as well as some donor money that is designated for this program. Reimbursements on the farmer's end, this picture captures it pretty well. You see the vendor has, if you're looking, the vendor has their jar for cash, their jar for tokens. So all that's required on the vendor side for our program is they just make sure, so most markets in our region have 3 tokens. One is just like you can scan a normal debit card for a cash token. One is a SNAP token, and then the other one is the Farm Fresh bucks token that can be used for fresh fruits and vegetables. So the vendor just makes sure that they're receiving the right token for the product. They collect them, they submit them in a bag with their vendor name to the market manager. The market manager at the end of the day counts them all, counts all the tokens, totals them up, sends us the bill for the tokens, how much we owe them. We write the market manager a check, and then the market manager distributes the checks to the vendors. So it's like a hierarchical and then back down the ladder kind of system of payment, but it's worked really well for us. Most vendors or most market managers tend to implement their own payment structure. We do partner with 13 markets, so everybody does things a little bit differently, but most people, have an understanding of when to expect to get paid when they sign on. So again, we're a young program, having only begun in 2020. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I did want to highlight some impact, some lessons learned, and just touch quickly on where we're going for the future. So 2023 has really been the first huge full year of implementing this program, and it's been a big success. So in 2023 alone, over 600 individuals and households were enrolled in the program, and the combined prescriptions filled at our markets in 2023 totaled to $173,000, more than that. And that is money going straight to farmers. That is grant money that we are distributing through our system that is connecting new people to the market that are using other benefits like SNAP to also engage in the market. And this is money just going straight to local food. And it's something that we really value and want to sustain. So some of the lessons learned, however, being a young program, we have plenty of them. We've had some rapid growth, and while we're celebrating that, we want to slow it down a little bit, and we're trying to reconnect and touch base with all of our stakeholders in this program and take time to really flesh out the details of what's working, what's not, and better cater and support our partners in this process. And that includes farmers, market managers, healthcare providers, and participants. Number two, the program just needs to be worthwhile for folks. So we have seen a lot of success here in Asheville and Buncombe County, which is a population dense area that also gets a lot of heavy foot traffic from tourists. When we have spread out to more rural counties with a wider spread population and less farmers coming to those markets, the program has struggled. And so we've had to cope with that by looking to implement a different style of model that better meets those needs and is more focused on aggregation and disseminating food boxes rather than requiring people to go to the market model. Yeah, and I'm not going to touch a ton on these because I see I'm about at time. But yeah, essentially be clear on mission and purpose. Funding is always a headache for a nonprofit. So that's something that we're always having to be creative for, as well as staying true to our mission and truly taking from the community at large and learning from others. Future planning, this boils down to fine tuning our systems as what I'll boil it down to for the sake of time. So yeah, we're just fine tuning things and trying to keep the ball rolling. So I will stop sharing there. And yeah, I appreciate everybody's time. Like I said, I don't know if we have time for questions right now, but feel free to please shoot Morgan some questions or feel free to ask if we do have time.
I apologize. The time constraint was a little short for your presentation, but if anyone has questions, feel free to ask them now. And for those listening, part of the reason that I brought Caleb in to speak today is because there is a pilot prescription program happening in South Dakota using a CSA model. And how you were talking about the GusNIP funding, Caleb, our program in South Dakota is too small to apply for that at the moment. So kind of where we're at the moment is looking for producers to participate and set aside some shares for the 2025 season to increase the number of individuals and households served. So then we would be more eligible for that type of funding. And so that's also something that we'll talk about later, but if there's any producers listening that are interested in learning more about how you can get involved in South Dakota, reach out to me, or if you'll stay on for the rest of the meeting, you'll hear a little bit more about that. I see that Rachel has her hand up. You're welcome to unmute and ask your question. Oh, I don't know if everyone has the ability. Okay, all the attendees should be able to talk now, so feel free to unmute and ask your questions.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to raise my hand.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
Any other questions for Caleb?
Caleb, so this, just to review here, so your program started in Asheville, and I presume there's a large farmers market well established in Asheville, and then when you scaled, right, how many other markets are you serving, and what's the radius, the area that you cover with this program?
That's a great question. So with our market model specifically, we cover 13 farmers markets. Most of them are in Buncombe County, which is Asheville's county. We do have 2 markets in Henderson County, which is a county that is still pretty population dense south of us. And then we have one market in Madison County, which is a widespread rural county, and one market in Haywood County, which is the same thing. They're both currently single market counties with population all over the place. They're folks that are around and in the mountains. And that's where we've seen, that's a great question. That's where we've seen some of our hiccups a little bit with our programming, because with Asheville so close by, they attract a lot of the vendors, right? And so a lot of people go to where the population is and where they're going to make the money. Some of those more rural communities, we're trying to get creative, and we do have another a pilot program that is more of like what Morgan was talking about, that CSA style. It's more of an aggregated food box for communities that are either distributed to folks in more rural communities, or they're able to come and to a single location and retrieve their food box and also participate in some community engagement events and stuff. So to answer your question directly, for our market model, we have 13 markets total. 9 of them are in Buncombe County, 2 of them are in Henderson County, which is south, 1 in Madison County, 1 in Haywood County. I realize these things don't mean anything to you, but 4 markets essentially in more rural spaces. And that's where we've seen, to speak frankly, in those more rural areas where we've struggled a little bit and had to get creative with how we implement our market model, just because there's not a big as base of consumer, and also not quite the same level of producers showing up week in and week out.
So did you, do all these markets have an actual formal market manager, whether it's paid or volunteer?
They
And then
do.
each market probably has to be set up to process the SNAP cards.
They do, yep. And that is something that we don't oversee. Ray and I don't oversee the SNAP program personally, but we do have support and somebody on our staff at large that supports with that process on making sure that people's point of sale systems are set up to accept SNAP, that they're training the market managers to implement the double SNAP and program, and so on and so forth. And we do the same.
One more quick wrap up. I'll be done here. But so who was the evangelist? Who was the St. Paul of your effort, who went out and convinced the market managers and converted the producer growers to collaborate in the program?
So it was a community effort. So the community growers, so ASAP's been around since the late 90s. And doing a lot of work directly with local farms and local farmers. And so ASAP as an organization in this region already has a ton of buy-in from the markets and the vendors. So that was a huge benefit for us in implementing this style of program, as we already had a lot of that buy-in. The healthcare providers and the participants are that's a different thing. And a lovely human named Larissa Lopez, who is no longer with the organization, but still doing great work in the food access world, was the one that was, as you say, evangelizing about this program to our healthcare providers and our participants at large. She was all over the place in 2022 and 2020 pre-pandemic. Great questions, Robert. Thanks for
I have one final question, and I apologize if you answered this while I was having some internet issues, but at the market, are all of the participating vendors in the market there to also accept the tokens, or is there select vendors? Does that ever deter any vendors?
Yeah. So it's the way we promote and build this is like an additional support. And so the vendors that are able to utilize this program are those who are producing fresh fruits and vegetables, which in spring and summer, most of our markets are having people who are producing fruits and vegetables in some capacity. Or mushrooms. Mushrooms is the other niche thing that's included in this. So there's been a lot of buy-in to the program from the vendors. For those who are meat vendors, predominantly meat vendors, that's a community that we're still trying to engage, which isn't necessarily our targeted audience for a program like this, but we're hoping to come up with creative ways of still being able to connect our community at large with those vendors. And one of the ways we're able to do that is through an initiative like Double Snap, which is more open-ended than just the fruits and vegetables, or excuse me, not Double Snap, but Snap, which is more open-ended. So we tend to lean on that program to advertise some of those vendors who maybe aren't benefiting from the bucks that are going to fruits and vegetables only. But that's a great question.
But all of the fruit and vegetable producers are able to accept those tokens. There are not.
Unless for whatever reason they say we don't want to accept these, which I think happened one time in like the pilot, when people were still trying to get an understanding of what this even was. To my knowledge, no one has just said we're not accepting tokens. Everybody, it's money straight to their pockets. We haven't. There's always hiccups in terms of like, you know, a missed couple of dollars here and there might pop up, but for the most part, it's been fairly smooth sailing and been a big benefit. And we've gotten a lot of good feedback from vendors.
Well, thank you so much for joining and sharing about that. The next people that we're going to hear from is Eric and Robert about a Tyndall commercial kitchen project that they've been working on. Eric is from Planning District 3. So just speaking a little bit to how the planning districts can assist in different projects like this. And if you guys want to share your screen, get started, that's great.
Can you see it okay? Okay. Bob, I'll let you go ahead and run with it, and I will, I can just,
yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Again, I'm Robert Bob Foley, and with Main Street Market of Tyndall. And so a little background on our situation. So we started a farmer's market in the middle of last year, 2023, in mid-season, and we had a September fall festival. And we relied upon the SDSU Extension Farmers Market Resource Manual, which is their second edition, and recommendations from the Producers Association to set up our market. And just a common theme is that we detected, that's pretty obvious, but I'll state it anyway, that the more grower, producer, vendor oriented the market is, the more successful the market is. So you really have to deliver to the grower for them to want to continue to participate in the market. Fortunately, our local development company, Tyndall Development Company, helped fund or seed the market, and our city provided space. We have some vacant lots on Main Street, and we ended up last year with 21 vendors cumulative. Not every vendor showed up at every market, and we range between 25 and 75 consumers in attendance. And so we did a survey of the attendees and the vendors, and it was a one that was driven from the South Dakota SDSU Resource Manual, and Eric at District 3 helped create that, and we pushed that out. But we ended up with some good responses, 53, and like basically it tested or asked for what types of products do people want to see at the market, and you know, you can see the list there from produce, baked goods, canned goods, meats, poultry, and then issues identified with the market, where we found that, you know, it's no, over half the people had no issues at all, but it was irregular pricing, or excuse me, irregular supply and pricing, and then other sort of physical things about the market. You know, the lots weren't even enough and things like that. And we also found there were 13% of the respondents were interested in volunteering for the market, and then we had another 7.5% who were interested in becoming a vendor. So then, based on this success, we decided to continue the market into 2024. And so we formally spun the operation up. We created a nonprofit, got the IRS tax nonprofit status, got our UEI, federal SAM registration, created our bylaws, and then Tyndall Development again gave us some startup funding, and we had our organizational meeting last week to set the 2024 rules. We're going to continue with the weekly market on Tuesday from 4:30 till 6. So that's where the Tyndall Main Street Market of Tyndall is. During this whole process, through the South Dakota Specialty Producers and District 3, the notion of a commercial kitchen rose, and we became aware of that. And we had some interest among the Tyndall market people to pursue that. So after some discussion, again, we worked with District 3 and Eric, and we used an Iowa State University Extension Outreach toolkit model to help structure a survey about a shared use kitchen, what the interest would be in that. And some of the things we learned, we had some pretty good response. We had 70, almost 80 responses, and they were mostly in our county, Bon County, but we did have some responses from Charles Mix County and Knox County, Nebraska, and I believe Yankton County. Anyway, some of the learnings there, let's see, where are we at here? Commercial kitchen. Okay, what people wanted to see from a commercial kitchen, right? And what benefits would there be? So some of the things that people identified as looking favorably, you know, in terms of the commercial kitchen, were to you know, operate help operate a food business. It would be useful to starting a business. It would help expand the business, could add value, and it would help, you know, test and develop products. And the different types of product categories people thought might be useful or might benefit from a commercial kitchen would be baking products, and then canned salsas, canned things like salsas and sauces, possibly to develop a catering business, jams and jellies, chilled fruits, frozen foods, and other sorts of condiments. So based on that interest, we kind of surveyed our community, right, and our assets and what's available. You can click to the next one, Eric. So we identified a facility in our community. It was a older building. It's 25 by 70, which you see the layout there. Plus it was an old bar that's not in use anymore. But the bar built a modern kitchen extension on, so you could see that. So that's the floor, the footprint, and through Tyndall Development, this asset, this building, can become available at almost a de minimis cost for the short term. So based on the interest from the survey and the availability of a economical facility, so we went ahead and applied for a commercial kitchen grant through the RFSI, the Resilient Food Infrastructure Program, and we put in it's about $85,000 worth of equipment. But in the process of putting this together, we identified a local grower, Stewart's in Charles Mix County, who grow aronia berries and black currants, and they're advanced in their production. So in fact, they're really familiar. They're active participants in the Producers Association, and they have right now 3 product development, value add product development ideas. And so we tweaked the grant, the equipment list to be not only just like a commercial kitchen, but we also included some packing, some equipment that would be useful in their packing, such as a 40 gallon steam kettle and a dryer oven and some packaging facility, you know, a can or a bottler for liquid products, and a vacuum sealer. So they would commit to between 48 to 72 hours a month based on their estimate of what they can run. So we have that kind of already tentative commitment to a base usage. And then, you know, it's up to us if we get the grant, you know, we're going to have to expand the usage to other, encourage other people. But we believe that based on the survey, even though we don't have anybody other than the stewards with a real, like a specific, I've got this plan and I need a facility to be able to execute my plan. We believe that the creation of a facility will then, with the right approach, the right marketing, will encourage other producers in the area writ larger, you know, like it'd be not just exclusively to Bon Home, but to other Charles Mix and Yankton and Douglas and Hutchinson County producers. So that's kind of where we are. Basically the business model that you know, the summary is, so our Tyndall Development Company funds the Main Street market of Tyndall, and it also helps subsidize this potential facility. And then the grower producers join Main Street market of Tyndall, you know, for the seasonal market, and then also for access to the facility. And then Main Street market then is applied for these no match equipment grant funds through the RFSI. And so should we, and I think we'll know probably by May, I think, on the whether we're going to be approved for the grant or not. And then on the condition of the grant, the facility has to be up and running by next May of 24, which that's entirely achievable in that due to the fact that we have the facility already. So I guess coming away with takeaways. So, you know, things that what we did may be, what can be improved and what might be useful to other people. Eric will get a little more into this, I think, but you know, probably we want to improve the survey templates and better market or explain or educate the producers on what a commercial kitchen / semi co-pack facility can do for them. And I guess our idea is, it seems like from our research that you need to have the larger sort of co-pack assets in addition to just what one would think of as the kitchen, the cooking assets. So that seems to meet the market here. So anyway, I'll pass the baton over to Eric, and then I'm sure we'll be able to handle any questions that people might have. Eric?
He emailed me that he was having some trouble with the Zoom, so I switched it over so that I'm sharing. And maybe, Robert, you can add what you can on these slides, and if he's able to rejoin, he can kind of take over.
Sure, be happy to. So the state of South Dakota, the state is divided up into planning and development districts. And that little map there shows the counties in South Dakota that are part of Planning and Development District 3, which was just located in Yankton. And he has 15 counties and 3 tribal governments. And they support their members with project development and grant application assistance, and also with land use and housing and that sort of thing. They're kind of oriented toward helping the civic, the city, and the county governments and the tribal governments with technical assistance. Like they operate a GIS system, and then they have a staff like Eric is, who's very conversant with doing grants. So if you get the information and define a project, right, District 3 will really help with the admin part of getting the grant. And the same concept goes with surveys and market research. You know, if they're a good technical support, you know, they're not going to do things for you, you know, and just where you sit back. You have to, you know, help them drive the car. And then I'm not really and maybe Morgan, you're a little more familiar with this, but it recently District 3 signed a agreement with, I think some other districts did as well, with that new like tri-state business operation, you know, with USDA. And so with that contractual arrangement, District 3 has become more and more interested in getting involved with this ag, you know, the homegrown small ag producer, the fresh fruit and vegetable thing. So they're committed to participating with market people and with producers and with civic government structures who are interested in doing this. And I don't know, I guess Eric Stowe has his microphone off. Here I bragged on their technical expertise. And he's got a technical glitch. But in any event, he was they were very helpful in wrapping up and the grant proposal for our kitchen equipment. And just by the way, so, and our next phase is we're looking to add a market manager for 2025, you know, for next year. So we're starting to work on that grant proposal.
Can anyone hear me?
You're on.
Hey. Sorry about that. I noticed when Bob was doing his presentation earlier, my video was flickering and went off, and so yeah, I caught that little piece about technical capabilities. But I know we're kind of at the end of our presentation, but I think Bob covered it pretty well. So, you know, for those that don't know about the planning districts in the state, we all, there's 6 of us in the state, but our office covers 15 counties in South Central South Dakota, and primarily we are supported by membership with the 15 county governments, 3 tribal governments, and 60 communities. And so we return those membership fees with assistance in all sorts of applications for funding, you know, for various projects. And in any other year, we probably would not be directly assisting, you know, Bob's crew or Main Street Market with, you know, funding applications for equipment or market managers or those kind of things. But as Bob mentioned, yeah, we the districts in South Dakota, well, and North Dakota and Minnesota have a contractual relationship with the Regional Food Business Center in Staples, Minnesota, under the Region 5 Development Commission. And so what we're supposed to do under that contract is, you know, work with communities, producers, you know, aggregators, and, you know, just with the idea of building wealth in our region through local foods, and you know, increasing the value along that food value chain. And so that has opened us up to helping organizations, you know, like Main Street Market in Tyndall or other markets across our region and try to help them, get in touch with funding programs. Like Bob mentioned, we helped them with the RFSI grant, the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure grant with DANR. Plus, there are other opportunities out there that are coming up soon, and so we're, in a way, we could fill the role of a, you might say, like a broker for funding, and we can hear Bob's proposals and kind of help them maybe, or steer them to the right types of resources, to help achieve their goals. But yeah, that's pretty much in a nutshell what we are, District 3. We have developed a plan, to try to help, with the local food value chain in our region, and so, Bob's crew with the Tyndall Main Street Market, definitely they're a vital link in that chain, and so we want to try to help outfits like his, and places like Wagner and Chamberlain and Freeman and those types of places. So yeah, but for the relationship with Region 5 Development Commission and the North Central Food Business Center, we wouldn't necessarily get into that kind of work. So we're learning how to be food value, or food consultants, you might say, which is a little different than what we usually do. But our previous director, that was kind of his mode of operation, was getting us into all sorts of things. So we're happy to be here. And again, apologize for the technical difficulties, but I could see Bob's the gears in Bob's mind meshing, or turning with Caleb's presentation. So I'm sure he's going to be calling me this afternoon, wondering how we can set up a SNAP program with the markets down here. But and that's what we're here for. So we'll see how it goes.
So if any of the listeners have questions for Bob or Eric, feel free to unmute and ask them, or to put them in the chat. One question that I have more for Eric is, if there are producers listening to this and looking to get in touch with their planning district, what is the best way to find the contact for their district and go about contacting them?
There is I know one resource that has all of the planning districts mapped out is on DANR's website, like through their funding programs for water and wastewater projects or programs. They do have a map of all the districts on like under their technical assistance page. Otherwise, I know my contact information and Bob's contact information is on the last slide there. And if anyone has a question about who they are, whose district they are in, they can just shoot us an email.
Thank you. And I see that Timothy put the link to that map in the chat. So if there is anyone wondering, you can find the link in the chat. Any other questions for Eric or Bob before we move on? If you think of anything, feel free to put it in the chat. So our last presenter for the day, SoDak Compost, they're unable to make it to the Zoom, so they were kind enough to record their presentation ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and share their presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deirdre.
Can you guys just give me like a thumbs up or put in the chat if you could hear that?
Deirdre Appel. I am the founder and director of SoDak Compost. Sorry, I'm sending a recording and unable to, I guess, literally be here for the day, but unfortunately I'm on a work trip and I did want to send a video, record a video beforehand to make sure that composting was part of the discussion today. So very excited to be here. Thanks so much to the organizers and Morgan in particularly for inviting me and asking me to speak today. I'll be talking about SoDak Compost, a nonprofit that I've started here in Sioux Falls, as well as composting overall in terms of how it supports some of our sustainable food systems efforts. So we'll dive right in. In terms of an agenda for what I plan to speak about, I come at composting very much from a food waste perspective, although it has a lot of benefits for soil health, farming, etc. So we'll talk a little bit about that, why composting is a solution to some of these issues that we're facing, a bit about SoDak Compost, and perhaps not so much getting to know you with the interaction that we could possibly have, but again, hopefully to get to know you after with some discussion or emails. So a few stats to set the scene here. The US has 4% of the world's population, but we produce 12% of the trash. This is a source from the National Resource Defense Council. Again, just showing in terms of sustainability, longevity, all of these things, we're a pretty wasteful society in terms of how much we produce, how much we consume, and how much we throw away. For food in particular, 30 to 40% of the food in the US is thrown away every year. And we have to think about this not just in terms of the food, the final product that's being thrown away, but all the resources that are going into creating that food, growing that food, distributing that food, getting it to that final point where it's then being thrown away. I think as producers and farmers, you would, I imagine, kind of cringe at this idea that your harvest, you could take 30 to 40% of that away without any issues of weather, disease, crops, whatever. 40% good food being thrown away, good harvest being thrown away. That's what we're doing when it comes down to our food system as a whole. In terms of our waste, 21% of the garbage in the US is food scraps and therefore can be composted. So when we're thinking about how much we produce in terms of trash, we also have to think about how much of that is being thrown out that shouldn't be. And food scraps, as we'll explain later in the presentation, is something that really should never go to the landfills and should never be considered garbage. And some of the other sources for these statistics are listed here in the slide. So on this last point, why is throwing food away a problem? Again, I came to composting from this perspective of food waste and the problem of it, both in terms of being wasteful with our resources, and then also that waste and wastefulness having a really negative impact on our environment as well. Across the board, organic materials continue to be the largest component of municipal solid waste. Here in Sioux Falls, they just did a waste characterization study and found through their audit that nearly 20% of the Sioux Falls landfill is filled with organics, meaning 20% of what goes in the Sioux Falls landfill shouldn't be there, doesn't need to be there, and could actually be used to produce something of worth. But the problem is that when we throw food away and it ends up in the landfill, it begins to break down in a way that's pretty harmful to our environment. So for the most part, at least in the Sioux Falls landfill, it's breaking down in a way that is done without oxygen. And when that happens, there's a process that is occurring that then allows a powerful greenhouse gas, methane, to be produced from the landfills. And from what we understand, landfills are the third largest producer of methanes after natural gas and livestock. So pretty powerful in terms of the sources of greenhouse gases. Also, if you don't want to think about it in terms of greenhouse gases or climate change or any of these, sorts of framing, you can also think about it in terms of society's assets and the fact that landfills are very expensive to operate, very expensive to create, and 20% of it is being filled with things that don't need to be there. So you could be expanding the life cycle of a landfill by just not having organics there in the first place. I think this is an example I like to use to explain the idea of why food shouldn't be in our landfills to begin with. There is a really great professor back in the 1970s out of Harvard that had what was called the garbage project. And he back then, oh my goodness, nearly over 50 years ago at this point, but he was trying to uncover a lot of society's misconceptions around landfills and around waste and around where things go when we throw them out. And he was uncovering misconceptions around beliefs of what happens to food when it goes in landfills. And there's lots of really good articles about this from the New York Times to NPR that uncover what they're calling mummified trash. And they're finding that when food is sent to a landfill and it breaks down, you can uncover it years later. And it essentially looks not too far off from how it looked when it first went there. And so the example here on the left side is you see these carrots after years of being in the landfill. And on the right side of the frame here, you see carrots a few days in our compost pile and then a few weeks in our compost pile. And again, after a few weeks, it's like having food in your fridge your food in your fridge is probably breaking down quicker than it is in a landfill without sun, without oxygen, without air. Really not any sort of environment for a natural decomposition process to happen. So the picture is our compost bin, one of them, and you see barely recognizable. This slide here is just reiterating the point that there are many benefits to compost beyond the landfill. So if you want to come to it from a perspective of the landfill, certainly a big argument to be made, but there's also a range of other benefits to composting. I had mentioned before soil health. Compost is an incredible additive for our soil health, for growing food, for water retention, for the overall health of a soil ecosystem. But as a community composting nonprofit, we also see a really great amount of benefits from growth in our community. There's an aspect of getting folks involved, educating, showcasing an awareness of sustainability practices, why it matters, very much more than what you might consider from a trash hauler, for example, that would just pick up your trash from the sidewalk. We are taking trash, quote unquote, away, but there is an element of being a part of the community, offering support, educating, and whatnot. And again, this last aspect here about protecting the environment, there is an environmental component to it, from greenhouse gases from landfills, but also from just the finite use of resources to produce food that's being thrown away. So what exactly is composting? I am aware I'm probably speaking to a audience that is very well versed in horticulture, farming, gardening, what have you, and certainly not an expert in this side of it. Again, we're coming from a perspective of wanting to just have a more sustainable lifestyle, ensure that our food scraps are not thrown away, and through that process to create a really valuable product from it. And so composting, we like to think of it as nature's recycling program. Again, composting has existed since the beginning of time. We just enter it and provide an environment where we can speed it up by creating the right environment. The picture here you see on the right side is our buckets that we offer participants, and I'll explain a little bit more in the presentation about what we offer, with pumpkins that we collect every fall to ensure that the pumpkins don't end up in the landfill either. So what's needed for the compost pile? We explain it in a way of having these core ingredients, so to speak. And these core ingredients help us create that optimal environment where we can speed up this natural decomposition process and allow ourselves to move from food scraps to a finished product of compost. We do aerated compost systems, so a core component to that is air. So that's something that we bring into the pile through turning it, using pitchforks and all of that stuff. At a larger scale, you could have windrows that would allow equipment to come in that would lift up these, massive piles of compost and add air to it. But we're small scale, so we just do everything by hand. In terms of food, you might have heard of this carbon to nitrogen ratio, browns to green nitrogen ratio, and these are the two food ingredients that we consider as key to our pile. So carbon-rich materials are used as the energy source. These are things like mulch that we add in, sawdust that we add in, which we actually get from a local woodworker in town, cardboard, pizza boxes, things like that. And then the greens, which are the nitrogen-rich materials, which is what we collect from all of the participants, which are your food scraps, or other materials. But for the most part, these are what participants are dropping off. Participants do drop off browns, but for the most part, it's maybe the pizza boxes that they might have had from that week. The last ingredient here is water. We add water to our piles to ensure that there are enough moisture for the microbes and all of these other organisms that are working to have the right environment. And you'll see here on the right side of the screen that we do have hot composting style. So our piles reach what's deemed as the benchmark for hot composting is 131 degrees. That allows a lot of pathogens and bacteria to be broken down. So you could take chicken and dairy and all these other materials that you might not be able to do if you're not reaching those hot temperatures. But you'll see that we are, for the most part, very much beyond 131 degrees, usually around 140, and sometimes in the summer even hotter, depending on the cycle that we're at with that pile. So introducing SoDak compost, this is kind of where we enter the discussion. We are a nonprofit that was founded in 2021, and we're working towards connecting the community to the problem of food waste, the potential of food scraps, and then the promise of compost. So really trying to link this whole cycle from farm to table, and then table to your compost bin. We are the first and only community composting nonprofit in South Dakota, and hopefully not the last. That this will be something that catches on, and a lot of communities and towns throughout the state can adopt. So in terms of how we work, we offer a drop-off service. So we have a certain amount of participants, families, businesses, individuals that actually come to us on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis to drop off their food scraps. And we take the, job on of doing the manual labor to then create the piles, work the piles, allow them to recycle their food scraps, but not necessarily have to take on the burden of managing a compost pile. And at the end of this process, we then allow them to purchase, or for a lot of them, their first bucket's free, but after that, they're able to then purchase some of the finished compost pile, which allows them to put it into their own gardens or their own household plants. Another thing that we do is we do a lot of outreach in the community. So presentations like this, we do workshops, we link up with schools, we link up with elementary schools, universities, businesses, just to spread the word about why composting is important and why we should be recycling our food scraps. Here we have a guide that all of our participants receive in terms of what can go into their bins, what can't. I had mentioned this before, but we don't actually accept meat and dairy. Our piles would allow it. I don't think we'd have a problem with it, but depending on the scale and how much we received, we were being quite conservative when we first started to ensure that we're not having many animal problems, smell problems, pest problems, things like that. The biggest offender is actually produce stickers. If you know those little pesky stickers that end up on your avocados and bananas and everything produce, they're very hard to remember to take off. I'm an offender of it as well. And they do end up in our piles a lot. So again, it's just this part of education, habit building, habit changing, and all of that. So a few pictures to show some of our progress. This is our first site. We have two now. The picture on the left here is what we started with. And on the right is our first build. We do a 3-bin compost system. Each of these bins holds about, I think 3 to 4 cubic yards. They're pretty big. They've held a lot of volume, and we're now going on our second year, and they've held up very well. They're made out of pine lumber. If we had more money, we would have certainly bought cedar, but at the time we just didn't have the funding, and still don't. But the dream would be to have cedar build compost bins. And what we do here is we put all the fresh food scraps in one, and throughout the cycle move a lot of the contents from one to the next, and then finally we move it out of the third bin to a pile outside under a tree where we cover it, and that's our finished compost that goes towards the garden that we're on, and then of course to the participants as well. Like I mentioned before, we've also now expanded to a second location. This is at another community garden in Sioux Falls. Slightly different build, it's a bit smaller, but again, the same style as well. And so a few more pictures here about what we take on and what we take in. A picture here about one of our participants collecting their food scraps, the buckets that they go into, and then this third picture on the right is one of our compost piles with fresh food scraps added to it. Another photo displaying some of the sifting that we do with the finished compost pile. This is really just to make sure that none of the contents like produce stickers, plastics, anything that makes their way into the pile is not something that the finished compost that folks get are part of. And it just makes for a really nice finished product by adding this into it as well. And we do, in fact, compost through winter. This was our first winter, this was a second winter, lots of snow. But again, with hot composting, the microbes don't slow down. We still continue to receive all of the food scraps, continue to build our piles, and maintain the temperatures that were needed. A few accomplishments here. We're very proud of the work that we do in the community. We're very proud of all of the participants that we have joining us, as well as the small businesses that also work with us. And we're a small but mighty team, but I think we're very proud of the fact that despite what these bins might look like, to date, we've collected nearly, at this state, I think we're closing in on close to 35,000 pounds of waste that has been diverted from the landfill by just a few folks with, you know, some good lumber and pitchforks, which is incredible to think about what would happen on a much larger commercial scale, or even if we had more than 2 sites. This slide here is intended to show the fact that we're not the first organization or nonprofit that has started, nor will we be the last. South Dakota is very behind in terms of commercial scale composting, community scale composting, and kind of any sort of food waste recycling in general. This is not to say that households and individuals don't compost. I think a lot of them do. But in terms of having an option for folks that might not have access to land or don't have a farm or don't grow up gardening, it's really quite limited. A few of the logos here are just other organizations, nonprofits throughout the US that have similar models to us, either in terms of community composting, or a lot of folks will do community scale, but instead of us taking on the composting necessarily in a public setting like you see with the 3 bins, they have a lot of farm partnerships. So they'll actually pick up food scraps door to door and bring it to a farm nearby that will manage the composting processes. And these are different partnership models. But again, happy to share more information about that if there are farms that are interested in setting something like this up. There is a lot of demand for this. I sit on the solid waste management board here in Sioux Falls, and composting and food waste recycling or organics recycling is really a big part of the agenda and strategy moving forward. Just quickly wrapping up, these are a few quotes. We ran a survey at the end of our first year and really just checked in with participants and asked, you know, why do you compost? Do you enjoy it? Things like that. And for us, this is the stuff that makes us go out when it's snowy and, you know, 0 degrees with the wind chill of -20 and whatnot. But people love it. People like to do it. It makes their lives better in terms of the life that they want to lead, in terms of being less wasteful, more sustainable, and we help them get there. And, you know, in the process, they help us as well. It's very much a community-driven partnership. Some more quotes as well. And with that, I will begin to wrap up and just offer our email, our website, any way to get in touch, to share feedback, to ask questions. I know I won't be present at the moment now while you're watching this to answer any questions, but I will be available afterwards through email or any other means if there's any interest in connecting to learn more. So wishing you a wonderful rest of the conference and hope to be in touch with some of you all soon. Thanks so much.
So thank you all for listening to that. One of the reasons that I had SoDak Compost come to speak is because there was interest at last year's aggregation meetings specifically about compost. And so I wanted to have her just kind of come and give an overview of what they're doing. And if any of the listeners are interested in connecting about creating a community compost program or how that can look for farmers and producers, you can email the information that was on her slides, and that video is also linked in the agenda, or you can email me and I'd be happy to connect you. I just want to open it up. If anyone has anything to add on the compost front, are any of the attendees currently composting on their farm? What does that look like for you? And Rachel, I do see that you're on if you have anything to add from the NRCS side.
This is Rachel. Yeah, I am happy just to drop 2 pieces of information. So within USDA, we have an Office of Urban Ag and Innovative Production. And under this office, they do a composting and food waste reduction cooperative agreement. So this agreement assists with local and municipal governments with projects that develop and test strategies for implementing composting plans or food waste reduction plans. And it's not just composting, but also purchasing programs for the ugly fruit or anything that kind of keeps waste either composted or from even going into the garbage system. And that can be for governments that might be working with nonprofits, tribal governments, etc. So that grant is going to be coming out soon for 2024. For those that are a little bit more smaller scale, with kind of just being a producer and having your own production, the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, we can help provide financial assistance in creating something like a 3-bin composting system that Deirdre had talked about. So that's kind of something that we have available for more of kind of the producer personal use on the farm for composting. So I can drop a link and then my information in the Q&A, and people are welcome to reach out to me.
Thanks for sharing. I see that there was some questions for you, Robert, in the Q&A. If you are able to, oh, it looks like you answered it already. About the commercial kitchen licensing. And so for the last remaining 13 or so minutes, I just wanted to make you aware of a few different opportunities. After this meeting, there will be a post survey that comes up on your browser, and there are some questions about some current opportunities, one being the prescription program that we heard about earlier. If you're interested in learning more about how to get involved for 2025, you can select that. Some other ones are gauging interest in Group Gap. This is a program through the USDA that offers producers to be certified as a group for the Group Gap certification. And within the group, there's one internal auditor. So you'll see questions both on your interest in Group Gap in general, as well as becoming an internal auditor and getting certified to and trained to do that. A couple other quick ones. Last year, specialty producers did price sharing for specialty crops, and we asked producers to add their pricing information, and we're doing that again this year, and producers will be compensated for giving their pricing information at 3 points throughout the year. And this could be a farmer's market that's doing it together. It could be individual producers. So if you're interested in that, please do select that question. And then the last thing that I want to make you aware of is that the Department of Tourism and SDSU Community Vitality are putting together a roadmap for Highway 14. And they're looking for local businesses, agritourism, and other local attractions that are locally owned and run to put their information on this roadmap. And so it's just another good opportunity to put your business out there, market your farm and your operation alongside other local attractions. And I have the contact information for that linked in the agenda. And just for these last few minutes, I want to open up the opportunity to just chat a little bit more about aggregation questions, resources, And I want to start by giving everyone the opportunity to unmute and introduce themselves if they'd like, and just say who you are, and just kind of why you're joining these meetings, what your operation is, and maybe where you're located. Angela, Kelly, are any of you interested in introducing yourselves?
Well, I guess I can, Morgan. Yeah, so my name's Angela Jackson. I live in Vermilion, and I have a certified organic farm, but I'm also a school food service director for a daycare, and we're looking to source organic and local under the CACFP program. And so we're interested, and we actually are looking at putting a commercial kitchen in the basement of the church where the daycare is at. So we're moving forward with that to be able to source. And then our church sits on 7 acres of agricultural land, and we're looking at renting 2 acres of that next year to do large scale community vegetable growing for the schools in Vermilion to be able to like source it. And so we had this huge opportunity come up, and we so we're learning. We're just learning. I'm here to learn as much as I can about, yeah, just aggregation and community kind of based projects like that.
Thanks for sharing. I know that in that agenda, there's also some past resources on commercial kitchens, Angela, including kind of a general survey that may be useful, as well as actually another church that rents out their kitchen as a commercial kitchen. So those might be interesting to check out.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Hunter, and I'm from Makoche Agriculture. We are located in Porcupine, South Dakota, which is on the reservation. We are in the middle of developing a food hub system here on the reservation, and this is why we are. And I was late because I couldn't find the Zoom link. But we are in the middle of designing and developing a food system here. Food hub building, which will have a commercial kitchen, freezer, refrigerator, dry storage space for large distributors, and hopefully start producing or keeping local and traditionally processed food here on our reservation. 95% of our produce or purchases are bought off of the reservation. So there's a lot of cattle ranchers, a lot of vegetable growers, and then they turn around, sell them, and then we turn around and buy them back in Rapid City or wherever the locals are doing their shopping. So we are trying to build the economy, a food system, develop a poultry farm at the same time. So we are dabbling in a little bit of everything.
I'm curious, both Angela and Kelly, as you're working on these projects, is there any specific challenges that you've run into, or any resources that you wish that you had or that would have been helpful in your planning and implementation?
For Makoche, we're fresh. We are just now developing our business plan. I noticed that a lot of businesses on the reservation don't want to share that kind of information, you know, on their educational programs or their commercial kitchens. So it's really hard to develop partnerships right now, as well as do our business plan because we are in the researching stage. So we're really fresh. I really haven't dabbled into everything yet. But I only caught the tail end of the commercial kitchen. I would like to know more on the certifications. What is, yeah. would it be utilized? Those are the questions. If we build it, will people use it? So that's where we're at right now.
Similar to kind of what I was saying after Angela introduced herself, in that same email where the Zoom link was, there's a link to the agenda, and that has previous webinars that really take a deep dive into the different ways that you can implement a commercial kitchen, what the requirements are, and kind of talking more about those certifications as well as some contacts. And if throughout your project you have more specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out either.
Thank you. Great.
I have a comment. I'm Greg Stack from Yankton, west of Yankton, South Dakota. I've got a 17-acre commercial wine grape production. We sell our grapes to Prairie Berry Winery in Hill City, South Dakota. Muriel and I were members of what preceded SPA way back in 2000, early 2000. It seems like, I'm not sure of dates, but Rhoda Burrows was the extension person, South Dakota State, who helped spear this and get a handful, literally 8 or 10 of us together. It gradually grew over a few years. It was difficult to imagine that, but what we hoped was that it would blossom this whole community. The difference is originally it was just grape growers and wine growers. And then watermelon people came on, can we make wine from watermelon and muskmelons and all sorts of crazy things. But then Pat Garrity was a big force behind this as well. And he was really pushing for what became the South Dakota Food Program, I forget what it's called right now, but the Food Mart out of Sioux Falls. And that became a reality and much needed for encouraging a larger expansion of food production in South Dakota for farmers markets. And actually very pleased over these 20 years to see SPA has really blossomed and has a lot of upward growth. And it's congratulations to everybody who's still actively involved in SPA, because it's important for our state and the individual producers like our vineyard and the countless other farmers market people. It's important because we have a food desert of sorts, and this is making a lot of difference. And I thank you.
Thanks for sharing that, Greg. And just to be respectful of everyone's time, I have a few closing thoughts, and then we can end this meeting. But I just want to reiterate that if you have more questions after this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by phone or email. And even if I can't answer your questions, I'll be happy to try to connect you with someone who can. So thank you again for joining today. After you exit the meeting, a post survey will pop up. And if you could answer those questions, it would be greatly appreciated. The answers are anonymous unless you choose to put in your contact information. And in addition to the general grant reporting questions about the webinar and specialty producers outreach, there's also questions about receiving more information on some of the opportunities that we talked about today. And again, if you have any specific projects in regards to aggregation that you want assistance facilitating or help getting feedback on, please reach out to me. I'm happy to assist, but these projects do need producer and community support to take off. So thank you all, and I hope that you enjoyed today's speakers.